So this here, I'm going to talk about the lore inclusions. I'm going to talk about different lore from the games and even like other kind of lore that I added in this fan film. So you see at the beginning, it mentions that Demise rose from the underworld and he was defeated by the hero and the goddess Hylia. But Demise came back as Ganondorf and the hero vanquished him but was killed in the process. And you see that it takes place at Death Mountain because Ganon originally had his base in Death Mountain in the first Zelda game and in A Link to the Past. And here, this is also a reference to Skyward Sword because the hero dies, but Hylia makes it to where she can assist him and gets reborn as Zelda. And of course, Demise's hatred manifests as Ganon, which is taken directly from Skyward Sword, which is chronologically the first game in the franchise. Then later, at Ganon's base in Death Mountain, Link finds the silver arrow that was used, and that's used to kill Aghanim. Now, of course, I made a little change and made it where Aghanim used to be a Sheikah, but he became a traitor. Like, that's not really confirmed. You know, a lot of people just had theories that Aghanim may have been a Sheikah, especially because in this self-contained film, Aghanim is a completely different character and not an alter ego of Ganon. So to make it work into the plot, I decided to make it where he was a Sheikah and was a traitor. And he's also the one who killed Link's parents as an attempt to try to keep Link from, ever coming to destroy him. And of course, I talk about this a lot, but this isn't necessarily a lore inclusion, but kind of something from Shigeru Miyamoto's childhood. Link goes into that cave, that tomb in the forest, and uses a lantern, and that's based very much on what inspired Shigeru Miyamoto for his games. Like, he used to go on childhood adventures where he'd go into caves with the lantern, and I figured that was a nice way to kind of introduce that and reference that. And of course, you have a Poe who's trapped, and the Poe gets rescued when Link solves the Poe's riddles and survives. That's a reference to the Poe sisters from the Forest Temple who were trapped and imprisoned. And here, I talk about this also in the script, but I wanted to give Link a character arc, so that way the MacGuffins could be more than just MacGuffins. So he finds courage when he courageously goes into the Forest Tomb. He and Zelda find power, but Link is still kind of cocky and arrogant and doesn't know how to use it. And so as he's finding the pieces of the Triforce of Wisdom, he's finding, more wisdom. And then, of course, he has to utilize all those in a balanced way when fighting the monsters at the end, to get to Aghanim and Ganon. So instead of making them just simple MacGuffins, I also want them to serve their symbolic purpose. I have to thank MC Prophet a lot for that, because MC Prophet's video on the Zelda symbolism really helped out with a lot of this writing and character development. And of course, you have some references to the goddess Hylia and the three goddesses Din, Nehru, and Ferror, as well as like Demise. You have the Breach of Demise, because even though it's not confirmed, people believe that the Breach of Demise in Breath of the Wild is the place where Demise rose, from the underworld. So I decided to incorporate that, as a nice little nod of the hat. Then, of course, with Malon, you have a few references to her mother and how she learned that song from her mother to sing to Epona. Here, whenever Link and Impa go to the Shadow Temple, it's mentioned that the Shadow Temple used to be a base for the Sheikah, but Aghanim kind of perverted it and turned it into a torture chamber. And she even states that even before he betrayed them, Aghanim was always sick in the head. So that's to give some more character to Aghanim and also kind of show some more depth. Because, I did have to make some changes to the lore since this was a self-contained movie. And here, this is kind of a dual reference. You see, in Skyward Sword, Link climbs up this rope to, a giant hole in the ceiling where light is shining through, out of this dark, dingy place. And as he's climbing, these zombified bokoblins climb after him. This is based on an old tale, an old Japanese tale. Basically, there's this man who is in the underworld and suffering, but there's one good deed he did, which was that he refused to kill a spider. Buddha, feeling sympathy for him, lowers a spider web in there for him to climb out, and he starts climbing, and he notices that everybody else is climbing after him, and he's telling them they need to get lost because this is for him. And because of him being selfish there, the spiderweb breaks and he falls back into the underworld and thus lost his chance of getting to freedom in heaven. So here you see Link is climbing into the heavenly light with Impa, and he sees the Redeads coming, and he cockily slices the rope and nearly causes Impa to fall but saves her. And that's kind of a symbolic way of showing that he's being very cocky and realizing, that he really has to use his balance of courage, wisdom, and power. There he used a little too much courage, and he used a little too much power, but he definitely did not use a good amount of wisdom. And then, of course, in Death Mountain, you see that Ganon has a base there, and I made it where he used the Gorons. Like, basically, this is kind of a theory that happened, but basically in this theory, the Zoras submitted to Ganon, so they turned evil. The Gorons refused to help Ganon, so he wiped them all out. So here it's referenced that most of the Gorons were wiped out, and Ganon's tower was built by the Gorons who he had enslaved. Now, of course, they have the Silver Arrow, and that's used to kill Aghanim. And Ganon, I didn't want him to be sealed into the Dark World because that would have been restored into the Sacred Realm, but he still had to be sealed away, so we had him sealed into the Gap Between Dimensions, which is borrowed from Ocarina of Time, where Ganon sends Phantom Ganon into the Gap Between Dimensions. Though, of course, it's not going to hold him permanently because of the cycle of eternity. And then, one of the biggest lore inclusions I want to talk about is the story arc of Dark Link. I definitely wanted to fit Dark Link and the Shadow and the Dark World in there somehow, and I found the best way to do it. You have to see the Dark World to see that this once sacred realm was corrupted by Ganon. And it's also a way of telling more about Link's character. And I think it's very fitting that I was able to get Scotty Whitehurst, who did the Triforce Prophecy, to voice Dark Link, so that way it kind of shows up a little bit of a passing of the torch moment. So here, in Twilight Princess, it's confirmed that the hero Shade is the regrets of the previous hero from Ocarina of Time, because he went back in time, and he regrets that he never got to pass down the information that he learned. So his regrets manifest in the hero Shade, and got to redeem himself by teaching everything he knew to the current Link. So here, Dark Link was the previous hero, but he was cocky and arrogant, and pretty much let himself get killed when he defeated Ganon. So his regrets manifested into a dark version of himself in the Dark World. And so here he's trying to train and teach, the current Link, so that way he knows how to actually balance courage, wisdom, and power. And as one of the symbolic elements mentioned, especially by NC Prophet, like, basically power is on top of courage and wisdom, as if it's being supported by them, saying that power without courage and wisdom is meaningless. And so, of course, Dark Link tells Link, what is power without courage and wisdom? Ganon. And so that kind of makes Link realize just how cocky and arrogant he's been, and so he has to gain the help from Dark Link, and that helps Dark Link to redeem himself. And so, yeah, that's a lot of the lore inclusions that I incorporated. I definitely wanted to incorporate as much as possible, and I hope this was insightful. I hope this could, help with anybody doing their own fan film to know how to balance lore elements and game elements and stuff like that.